Have you ever caught yourself rereading the same sentence again and again, not because it's hard, but because your brain just refuses to hold on to it? You're staring at the words, your eyes are moving, but nothing is sticking. And in that moment, there's this quiet frustration that creeps in. Like maybe your mind is slipping or you're just not as sharp as you used to be. But listen closely, because that feeling is deeply misunderstood. It's not a memory problem. It's a mismatch between how your brain actually works and how you've been told it should work. And once you understand this, memory stops feeling random or unreliable and starts feeling like something you can activate on command. The big idea, here's the shift most people never make. Memory isn't about effort, it's about state. Your brain doesn't remember what you force into it. It remembers what feels safe, clear, and meaningful in the moment. When you're stressed, rushed, or judging yourself, cortisol rises and memory formation shuts down. When your nervous system is calm and engaged, dopamine and serotonin quietly strengthen neural connections behind the scenes. Japanese cognitive traditions, backed by modern neuroscience, are built around this exact understanding. They don't try to overpower the brain. They design conditions that allow memory to emerge naturally. Once you see memory as an environment-sensitive system, instead of a mental muscle, everything changes. Intentional slowness and the brain's trust signal. If you've ever noticed that the harder you rush, the foggier your thinking becomes, there's a biological reason hiding underneath that experience. Slowness isn't laziness, it's a neurological signal. In Japanese culture, intentional slowness is woven into learning, craftsmanship, and daily rituals because the brain associates slower pacing with safety. When your movements, breathing, and attention slow down, your nervous system shifts out of threat mode. Cortisol drops. The hippocampus becomes more active. Memory encoding strengthens without conscious effort. The danger is believing speed equals intelligence. The reward is realizing clarity only arrives when the brain feels unpressured. Once your brain learns that slowness is allowed, memory stops resisting and starts cooperating. Memory that locks in through physical movement. If you've ever remembered a conversation better while walking than while sitting still, that's not a coincidence. This next habit confuses most people, but it's one of the strongest memory amplifiers. Japanese learning traditions often pair cognition with subtle physical action, not intense exercise, just gentle movement. Walking, writing by hand, standing, or even rhythmic gestures increase blood flow and dopamine signaling. This tells the brain that the information matters enough to store. When learning is completely static, memory floats. When it's paired with motion, memory anchors. The mistake is thinking stillness equals focus. The advantage is realizing your body is part of your memory system. Once you involve it, recall becomes faster and more reliable. The forgotten power of mental empty space. If silence makes you uneasy, it might be quietly sabotaging your memory. Most people fill every gap with stimulation, thinking more input leads to better retention, but here's where everything flips. Japanese philosophy places enormous value on empty space, not as absence, but as integration. Neuroscience confirms this. Brief mental pauses allow adenosine to accumulate, signaling the brain to consolidate information instead of chasing new input. Without these pauses, learning stays shallow. The risk is mistaking constant stimulation for productivity. The reward is discovering that memory forms in the spaces between effort. Once you stop fearing mental quiet, your brain starts organizing itself naturally. Emotional neutrality as a memory accelerator. If you've ever blanked during an exam or forgotten a name the moment it mattered most, this section explains why. Strong emotional pressure floods the brain with cortisol, which actively interferes with recall. Japanese mental discipline trains emotional neutrality, not excitement, fear, or urgency. Calm curiosity keeps serotonin stable and allows memories to surface smoothly. In real life, this means approaching information without telling yourself it's crucial, urgent, or high stakes. The danger is tying memory to performance anxiety. The reward is realizing memory works best when emotional weight is removed. Once pressure disappears, recall feels effortless instead of forced. Gentle repetition that the brain actually accepts. If repetition has ever felt draining instead of reinforcing, you've been fighting your own neurology. This habit surprises people because it looks almost too easy. In Japanese learning systems, repetition is light, spaced, and emotionally neutral. Instead of drilling intensely, information is revisited casually across time. Dopamine rewards recognition without triggering mental fatigue. Forced repetition causes resistance. Gentle repetition builds familiarity. The mistake is assuming struggle equals learning. The reward is understanding that consistency quietly rewires the brain. Once repetition feels safe, memory deepens without burnout. How environment becomes a memory extension. If you remember certain thoughts only in specific places, that's your brain using environmental cues. Memory is context dependent, and Japanese spaces are intentionally designed to reduce cognitive noise. Minimalism isn't aesthetic preference, it's neurological strategy. Clean lines, stable lighting, and predictable environments lower mental load, freeing memory resources. Chaos forces your brain to filter distractions instead of storing information. The danger is ignoring your surroundings. The advantage is turning your environment into a silent memory trigger. Once you align space with focus, recall becomes faster and more accurate, stopping before fatigue to lock memory in. If you've ever noticed that the last part of a study session disappears fastest, there's a reason. Most people push until exhaustion, thinking more time equals better results. Japanese cognitive discipline favors stopping early, while the brain still feels energized. Ending on a high point leaves a dopamine imprint that strengthens consolidation later, especially during sleep when melatonin supports memory storage. The risk is overworking until everything blurs. The reward is discovering that less effort at the right moment beats more effort at the wrong one. Once you respect your brain's limits, memory lasts longer. Advanced insights used by elite thinkers. This is where everything connects at a higher level. High performers don't treat memory as a separate skill. They regulate their nervous system first, knowing stress destroys recall. They design learning around energy cycles instead of forcing consistency. They recreate the same physical and emotional state when recalling information as when they learned it. They trust rest as an active cognitive process, not wasted time. And most importantly, they remove judgment from forgetting, allowing the brain to recover faster. This calm mastery is what creates the illusion of effortless intelligence. And it's fully trainable. The final mindset shift. The real realization is this: forgetfulness isn't failure, it's feedback. It tells you your brain needs safety, clarity, and alignment, not more pressure. These Japanese brain hacks aren't shortcuts. They're reminders of how your mind was designed to work in the first place. Once you treat memory as a relationship instead of a test, it transforms completely. If this changed how you see your brain, stay with the channel and subscribe. In the next video, we're uncovering why zoning out might actually be a sign of deep intelligence and why most people misunderstand it entirely.